Hey, it's Fletch, and this is an audio version of my latest blog, 2 Meters from Disaster. You know, these days we're all thinking about social distancing by about 6 feet or 2 meters. Well, here's a little something that even some of my closest friends don't know. Tucked away right over there in the corner of my desk, there are a few little boxes and a speaker and a microphone that, if you listen closely, can often be heard blaring out some Morse code known as CW with various station identifications. Quite often I'll be asked, "Hey, good buddy, is that your CB radio?" And I laugh and explain to them, no, that's not quite a CB radio that was made popular in 1977 by Smokey and the Bandit and the late Burt Reynolds, and then during the CB craze that swept the country for a few years. Heck, I remember back then, I'd get on and talk for hours with my good friends Sunfish, Knothead, and my dear friend Panda Bear. Heck, even my mom was on the air as the Wicked Witch since her birthday fell on Halloween. You know, as a side note, if you look back, CBs were really the first incarnation of communications-enabled social media. Today's instant messaging, video chatting, and even general texting that's become a social media phenomenon could have been totally predictable if we were paying attention back then. Anyway, back to the story. So this noise is not a CB. It's coming from my amateur radio that's tuned to the 2-meter band, and for a very special purpose. So while many of my friends from the so-called Chicken Band got rid of their CB radios in garage sales and dropped all their CB handles for titles with senior and global in them, a few of them ventured into amateur radio and the worldwide communications that were possible on that new gear. Now, personally, I never made that leap, mostly due to the Morse code requirements that the FCC had at the time. For some reason, the neural connections that the dits and the das needed to make sense in my brain just weren't there. So I came to the realization that amateur radio wasn't for me. Then I found some gold in Chicago. Fast forward about 40 years, I find myself in Chicago as the Next Generation Emergency Communications Track chair for the Illinois Institute of Technology Real-Time Communications Conference. Professor Carol Davids of the Institute came up to me and asked me if I needed some extra speakers for my track, which I absolutely did. Then she offers up Bill Palmitz. Now, Bill is an interesting electrical engineer from Florida with a long career in communications. And he's been a ham radio operator since he was 14 and currently owns radio call sign K1MM in Orlando, Florida. And the reason I was interested in Bill is that his segment brings in one of the last frontiers of communications that are considered in the world of unified communications. And thanks to the Illinois Institute of Technology, his session is archived and available on YouTube, and there's a link to that in the written version of my blog on Fletch.tv. Be sure to check it out. Now, after being inspired by Bill that year, in the late fall of 2019, since the Morse code restriction was removed, I decided to take the plunge and studied for my FCC technician class radio license. I took that in January of 2020, passed, and over the next 6 months became immersed in this new culture while making several new friends in the local and distant area. Ultimately, I started participating in the local area VHF traffic nets and the local RACES and ARES activities, where amateur radio operators would work with the county emergency management operations managers, as they would be called on to help out during times of disaster with communications. Hey, right up my alley. And what really amazed me were the number of folks in the public safety industry, people I knew and didn't know, that were also hams, but never mentioned it before. Well, recently I got appointed as an official relay station, or ORS, for the National Traffic System. And once a week, I often spend 20 to 30 minutes on Thursday evenings as an alternate net control operator, whose job is to pass messages in and out of the northern New Jersey area. Now, today, most of these are just routine non-emergency messages, but the strict and rigid communication practices of traffic handling get sharpened. So I'm confident that if this hurricane season there is a disaster, and it does knock out communications locally, I'll be well prepared as I've got the equipment, the knowledge, and the ability to be part of a relief effort establishing communications into and out of my area. And should regular communications fail, myself along with several other operators will be key to providing communications resources while the critical utility infrastructure is being restored. That's pretty cool. Now, what I really find interesting is that the topology of the National Traffic System is very much like the topology for the National Telephone Network, or the Internet for that matter. They're local last-mile operators, such as myself, regional collection points, and then entities responsible for the long-haul traffic between the East, Central, and Western regions, as well as around the world. Now, while delivery of the information might not be instantaneous, critical information on conditions, loved ones, and needed supplies like food and shelter can be passed reliably in nearly any environment. And here's the key. It's done with minimal infrastructure in place. Remember, modems are audio, and 1200 baud is pretty resilient. It's just not really fast. What's the investment? Well, it's actually pretty small. Small handheld radios are typically available for less than $50, and even a higher powered mobile radio, easily converted from a mobile to a base, can be obtained for less than $130. So with about a week of brush-up studying and a fairly simple test, which are now being conducted online due to the pandemic, anybody can become a licensed amateur radio operator. And that will put you in contact with your local support agencies and services. Remember the Illinois Institute of Technology Real-Time Communications Conference? Well, this year it's going to be virtual, and thanks to sponsors, is going to be available free of charge. Corporate sponsorships are still available, and we're expecting a great turnout for the event. You can find out more at www.rtc-conference.com. And as for Bill, W1MM, he was invited back, but not by an email or a phone call. I sent him a good old-fashioned radiogram by the National Traffic System. Thanks again for stopping by my little corner of the internet, and as always, I hope I brought a little something to you that you never knew before, or learned a little more about something that you did know. Stay safe and healthy, and we'll catch you next time. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter @Fletch911, and be sure to check out the rest of my blogs, available online at www.fletch.tv.